50 NFL coaches and executives, including 6 general managers, 8 head coaches, 10 evaluators, 12 coordinators, 6 quarterback coaches, and 7 executives whose specialties include analytics, game management, and the salary cap. The remaining ballot put together by 4 members of one team's personnel department. Okay? These are NFL people who've created this list.
Right, not just some writer.
No, some writer got all their info.
Writer,
Mike's great. He did all the work. But this is a survey. So I'm going to read you the names, and I'm also going to read you the definition of each tier. And we're going to get to Fields fast because Fields is the story for as far as we're concerned.
I also giggle at the one person tier 5 though. That's not nice.
Tier 1. So the survey excludes rookies because voters haven't seen them play in the NFL. More than one quarterback is featured for teams with unsettled starting jobs. Tier 1. A tier 1 quarterback can carry his team each week. The team wins because of him. He expertly handles pure passing situations. He has no real holes in his game.
So nice.
Okay, that's easy to understand. Tier 1 consists of, in order, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes.
Somebody had to do it.
Tom Brady, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. That's it. Those 6.
Okay.
Any arguments? Anybody? No? Any arguments? Okay. Tier 2.
This is where it gets interesting, though, because that's the one that you're going to mention where you could say,
well, yeah.
But the interception.
A tier 2 quarterback can carry his team sometimes, but not as consistently. He can handle pure passing situations in doses and or possess other dimensions that are special enough to elevate him above tier 3, has a hole or two in his game. So starting with number 7, your tier 2 quarterbacks are Matthew Stafford.
Bingo.
Russell Wilson. Deshaun Watson. Lamar Jackson. Dak Prescott. Derek Carr, Kyler Murray, and Matt Ryan, in that order.
Some very wealthy individuals on that list.
Make a lot of money in tier 2. Yes. You can make yourself a whole lot of money. So that's it. That's tier 2. We're already through 14 quarterbacks. Anything notable? Any raised eyebrows? Any arguments for or against? So, okay. But
Stafford, you could argue just because of his previous team and he's new to this one, but we've seen a lot of his work. Yeah,
and he just won a ring, and it validated a lot of what they did to get him. Tier 3. A tier 3 quarterback is a legitimate starter, but needs a heavier running game and or defensive component to win. A lower volume drop-back passing offense suits him best.
The most mid of mid quarterbacks.
This would be your mid group in tier 3, starting with number 15. This group comprises Kirk Cousins.
That's who I meant.
Jimmy Garoppolo, Ryan Tannehill, Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, and Jameis Winston.
This is the problem with the level of quarterback talent in the NFL, where you're sitting there asking yourself if what you know about Trevor Lawrence and his potential, despite the head coach he had, is enough to say, is this an appropriate spot for him?
But we're through tier 3 now. There's a name I haven't mentioned yet.
Correct.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the definition, we're going to finish it out, and then I'm going to come back, and we'll take this, as we should, from a Bears angle. The description of a tier 4 quarterback, the definition. A tier 4 quarterback could be an unproven player, not enough information for voters to classify, or a veteran who ideally would not start all 17 games. So there's 2 definitions there. that could be met. Your tier 4 is Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa, Davis Mills, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance.
Depends on who you ask.
Daniel Jones, Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky, and Drew Lock.
Who's tier 5?
Okay, tier 5 real quick. Tier 5 quarterbacks best suited as a backup. Tier 5 starts at number 35. Tier 5 is Geno Smith.
He's his own tier.
The Geno Smith tier. He gets his own area, I guess,
Aww.
his own tier where he can sit and shed tears. Tiers. So do you want to know exactly what's going on with Fields as they see it?
Yes.
The book on Fields says he's exceptionally smart and should have no trouble learning a new offense, but lacks a natural feel for the game, which could limit his ceiling. It's more instincts and awareness to blitzes, the clock, those types of things, a general manager said. There are some quarterbacks maybe not as smart who have all that. A coach with ties to the Bears says, I wonder what that means, says he's, quote, cautiously optimistic, unquote, about Chicago's new franchise quarterback. And he continues. This is described as a coach with ties to the Bears. That can mean anything. I do think his anticipation in the drop back game needs to improve. But he does throw a really good deep ball and a deep cross route where some of those other guys, I did not have that feel in the drop back game of can they make certain throws as consistently. It's everything else he has to figure out. I don't think he's going to be a top shelf guy this year, but you are going to trend. You're going to say we can win with this guy. I don't think he's ever going to be tier 1. I think he can climb to maybe a 2 or high tier 3. Is it Matt Nagy talking? Is it a former Matt Nagy assistant talking? We'll never know. If Fields makes such a jump this season, one voter noted that the Bears' new offensive coordinator, Luke Getty, could become a head coach next offseason, introducing another unwelcome disruption for Fields early in his career. That would be a good problem for the Bears to have, better than other problems the team has faced at the position over the years. A personnel director said Fields has the ability, talent, and skill set to ascend, but I don't know if he has the weapons around him to ascend at a rapid pace. He should be a better player this year.
I take issue with the lack of feel for the game because he was spending the entire season last year running for his life in dropbacks that weren't favoring him largely because they require an excellent offensive line, which he didn't have.
And what Matt Nagy would tell you in response to that, if you got a couple of beers in him, he would tell you ball wasn't out on time. That it wouldn't have looked so bad if the ball was out in rhythm.
It's not just Matt Nagy. It's anybody who wants to detract from Justin Fields. But you want to sit there with a timer and time those plays from the start of the snap? Because I sure would like to. And I'm saying that was a multi-system organ failure offensively. And he told you as much. If the field read progressions require you to not see the open receiver, don't talk to me about a feel for the game yet.
That's why I think the definition of tier 4 is for him has to be an unproven player, not enough information. But then they provide information. And if
you want to look at one of the historically worst passing games of all time, sure, you can talk about it. And that'll justify your argument.
And I think, too, that what happens is the quotes that are used, the actual quotes that any writer is going to use, as Mike Sando, we presume, did here, are going to reflect a consensus. You're not going to cherry pick. If you're doing it right, if you're doing it faithfully, you're not going to cherry pick quotes that are outliers. You're going to throw out some extremes on either end and find some in the middle that sum up what the ultimate total number was that you got. And they probably represent what is being said about it's one thing to be smart. It's another thing to be instinctive. And maybe that is, we learn more about that this year. We have to learn more about that this year.
Sure. But this right here is the result of what we were all afraid of when we knew he was being put into a system that wasn't favorable. And when we ask about his development and whether or not it was going to hurt him or damage him for the future, this is what they were talking about.
And
you could also argue Lamar Jackson could be, like, I would put him higher. It shows you the depth of the talent of the quarterbacks in the NFL. Goff and Wentz not too long ago were considered the 1 and 2 that you wanted to clamor and trade up for, and look how that's gone.
Let's throw out last year, just as an intellectual exercise. Let's say last year never happened, and it's possible that Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham, in their scouting of him, it's possible that they saw these things coming out of college. We don't know if Ryan Poles likes Justin Fields.
We don't. We also know Denver wanted Patrick Surtain.
Are you rebuilding, or is there a different word you use?
Oh, yeah, no, the rebuild thing's like super sensitive.
Mm-hmm. But we have no idea whether or not the Bears brain trust would concur on this, and whether or not they think such things are teachable, whether or not they're developable. Don't know. But this, I thought his name was going to show up sooner, frankly.
Yes, I did too.
I did too. I didn't think he would be. I thought when the way they defined tier 3, I thought, all right, throw the guy a bone and put him ahead of Trevor Lawrence. This is sort of like what we did with Chris Sims. Who we're trying to get on when we can, by the way. Chris Sims thinks much higher of Justin Fields than this does. And there are also people who look at Next Gen and Pro Football Focus and look at exactly what you're saying. The receipts on that, the timing, the windows into which he was asked to throw that say, here are objective measures of the deck being stacked against him.
Time from the ball being snapped, especially in a 7-step drop back, which requires how many more tenths of a second when your pocket is already collapsing? Stop it. Just stop it. You really think that Justin Fields isn't as good as Jared Goff?
It's funny. If you come look at my screen right now, I had scrolled, and that's the picture I'm looking at right here.
You really think Justin Fields isn't as good as Carson Wentz?
I had scrolled to number 22 here. It was the Jared Goff thing that I went, well, okay. If he's not as good as Jared Goff, that's a bust.
How many teams does Carson Wentz have to be traded to before you know who that guy is, by the way? I would think that would already be established by now, given that we did our work on it and had a whole Bears Monday knowing that he wasn't going to come here.
He's in the same tier as Drew Lock, Sam Darnold.
Jalen Hurts?
Jalen Hurts was above Fields, no? That's what I thought I saw. But
when you think of Mac Jones being 18,
right,
that just shows you the breadth of the talent in the NFL at that spot. That's a crazy
I
part.
also would carry through this idea of instinct and feel. No matter what, that was a common thread that Matt Nagy quarterbacks all lacked. No matter who it was, no matter what they'd done elsewhere, pick a name. Foles, Dalton, Trubisky.
Which is where
when you start saying, what's more likely? What's more likely? That all of them lacked feel and instinct, or there was a systemic problem that prevented them from doing so?
Thank you. Come on. And the NFL and in football specifically, where you can create systems that will help people, birth the phrase system quarterback. Do not come at me with this trash. And the most polarizing person in this whole thing is the most mid of them all, Kirk Cousins. That is perfect.
Rich,
yes. Grift, yes or no?
And I love the way Sage Rosenfels, who watches every game that he plays too, and has described that once something starts to go wrong, if everything's right, he's fine. But once something starts to go wrong, more things start to go wrong.
And to me, that's an issue. That's a huge problem.
You can't trust that person.
Coaches say, do not let one loss beat you twice. We are living that now in certain places of our sports lives, people. You know what I'm talking about right now. So to me, this list, I understand based on pure scouting report how they got there, but don't discredit your eye test. And frankly, based on age, I would still rather have Justin Fields on that alone.
Well, value on the open market is not what they're assessing, and I agree with you. I
always intrinsically go there, whatever.
Yeah, I do think he certainly has untapped value based on old thoughts and a reset from the previous regime. No doubt.
I really like Geno Smith, and Kirk Cousins is mid.